Hello everyone. After I made my top 10 recommended premiums, I was asked to make a similar list, but for premiums that I am, let's say, strongly against. Premiums I would not recommend getting. Now there's actually such a huge list of really bad premiums. I'm just gonna highlight a couple from every tier that I think are a waste of your resources or an example of resources that could be spent better. Now, what I do want to say is thank you so very much for your support on my Twitch channel. I've actually reached 93,500 followers. So if we can manage to grind those last 6,500 followers on my Twitch channel, that means that finally we will reach that 100k, which will mean that amazing giveaway I will finally be able to give. Basically, Wargaming will sponsor me a huge giveaway to give to you guys, to all of you viewers, if we manage to reach that 100k. So if you can just be arsed, if you can take the time, the second, the minute to click follow on my Twitch channel, I would much appreciate it, because it basically paves the way for a gigantic giveaway on my channel. So thank you very much if you can be arsed. Moving on. Terrible premiums. Now, below tier 5, I mean, who really buys premiums below tier 5? There's a ton of them. But let's start with tier 5, since this is where the premiums start costing like 10 euros or more. So you actually have to pay something for them. So you might really regret if you paid for one of these. Marblehead, just don't get it now. It has multiple issues, the range being highly limited, and more importantly, this ship has absolutely no armor at all. And when I say absolutely no armor, I'm talking 10 millimeters. In fact, the Marblehead is one of the few ships, just like the Omaha, that can overmatch its own armor. If you shoot another Marblehead, you can overmatch his nose with AP, and you can Citadel him straight through the nose. And the Citadel is actually gigantic. So Marblehead, especially if you're up tiered in any way, is just like the Omaha, a floating citadel. Another example is the Krasny Krim, which is incredibly squishily armed, but not just that, it's also very slow. This is with speed flag, it does 29 knots. It's got poor concealment, it's got no real punching power at all. Like, you can eventually chip down a DD with these guns, but in terms of damage output, it's just so underwhelming. Just skip it. Genova, same issues, giant floating citadel, but whereas this one does have some decent okayish volleys, it comes at a gigantic cost of a 20-second reload on these guns. Like, why on earth would you play this when you can play the Furutaka instead? The damage output is pitiful, and it can't really tank any damage at all. Yahagi, well, honestly, 652mm guns with a 9-second reload. Like, what else do I need to say? This is just a joke. Viribus Unitas, this thing has 35.7k health at tier 5 in a battleship. When you consider that, you can probably get dev struck by 2 IGN torpedoes, because the torpedo belt is so weak. This thing is basically just a massive joke. Just don't. These are all big. We could go through a lot more, but honestly, we're gonna move on to tier 6 at this point. I would choose Huang He. Low HP pool. Now you can get some gimmicky DD hunting going on with this thing, and you can farm some PR, but ultimately the ship has 24k health. It's very slow for a cruiser. It's 33 knots for a supposedly sneaky hunting cruiser. It has the damage output, I think it's 113k DPM, which is just laughably poor, and the range is laughably poor. If you get up tiered in any way in this thing and you actually have to fight someone 1 versus 1 and you can't use a smoke gimmick, you just get deleted. It's good for farming PR, but it's not good for fulfilling the basic role of a premium, which is farming credits and money. Duca kind of has the same issues. It's just a really poor damage platform. DPM is poor, 14 km range. Even worse so is that the guns actually have a really trash fire chance at 8%, so you cannot really do anything about battleships. Even if you land your torpedoes, you got 2x3 of them and they don't hit that hard. Duca is simply not worth the money when there are so many better options. One more, Prince Eitel Friedrich. what's there to say? It's the only German battleship in the game that doesn't have a turtleback, which means that it's the only German battleship that you can reliably citadel just by shooting its broadside from range. It has 305mm guns, or sorry, 350mm guns, with the worst HE DPM of any tier 6 battleship, and the AP has the worst penetration of all tier 6 battleships. So worst HE DPM and worst AP penetration. I mean, really. And it's 28-second reload and 45-second turret traverse. It's just don't. There are so many better options than the Prinz Zeitel Friedrich. Just absolutely not worth it. Let's move on. Tier 7. What do we have at tier 7? Bliska. Bliska used to be good, but honestly, the Bliska never really recovered after they nerfed the stealth fire change. It's kind of been power crept hard since then. Good recent example is the Weklin. This thing deals 119k HE DPM. 119. The Weklin, the French tier 7 destroyer, deals 120k DPM. That's without using the reload booster. But it also has 1 kilometer better range. It also has a better fire chance. It also has better armor pen on the HE because the higher caliber. It's also significantly faster. It also has much more health. Like this thing has just gotten outclassed hard. The biggest issues is really the lack of concealment. Even if you build full concealment, it's iffy. The DPM is an issue, the lack of it. Basically, most other ships just outtrade you, even at the same tier. Its strength used to be speed, but that's gotten power crept very hard. And then there's rocket planes who simply don't care about your speed at all. Even worse is that it's tier 7, so it gets up tiered a lot. And this thing already kind of struggles at its own tier. Being up tiered, it's just an XP pinata. Other ships. Well, Duke of York. I think honestly Hood would be the worst of these. And that is, it's decently tanky and decently fast. But if it wasn't for the Gneiser now, this thing would have the worst HE and AP DPM of all tier 7 BBs. The AP has improved pen angles, but the alpha is just so pitiful. And even though the guns are 381mm, it still has less pen than, for example, the Duke of York or the King George. And these guys have like 356mm guns, smaller caliber, but they still have better pen. And of course, if you get up tiered in this thing, the tankiness kind of goes out the window, because especially tier 7 gets up tiered a lot. And this thing is, not only is it a huge, absolutely gigantic ship, which is very easy to shoot at, it also turns like a complete brick. So what you end up having is a kind of underwhelming gun platform that a lot of ships love shooting at. I can't with a good conscience recommend getting this ship. I wouldn't recommend getting Duke of York either, but I mean, at least that thing can do some decent HE damage and has hydro. Neither really recommended. Gorizia, well, at least some of you guys got this one for free, but it's not like you'd actually want to play this thing. It has the worst AP DPM of all tier 7 cruisers. The SAP DPM could be decent, but a 15-second reload and no ability to start fires and no torpedoes means that battleships can essentially ignore you. You're just not a threat to battleships at all. The AA is trash, the concealment is pretty weak, and the ship just suffers so heavily from being up tiered into tier 7 because, well, it's so brutally squishy that everything you fight just kind of blaps it. The large citadel doesn't exactly help matters. Just, Gorizia is not a very enjoyable ship. But hey, at least you got it for free. But I mean, if they put it, I don't know if they're putting it up for sale or something, don't buy it. I don't recommend it. That's enough tier 7. Let's do a tier 8. Gascan, Guscan, whatever. Where to start? First of all, the armor. This thing is coated in 32mm plating, basically everywhere. And in the current state of HE spam, this is a significant weakness. Now, it somewhat makes up for this by having, it's actually really fast, and it's got pretty decent stealth. But the downfall of this ship, just like with the Hood, is the guns. Battleships that don't have strong guns are just not very strong battleships. It's kind of what they do. You put a battleship in a strong position and then it blaps anything that moves. That's what a battleship brings to a battle. It's a threat. It's we can't give broadside to this area because there's a battleship. We can't push this way because there's a battleship. It's the guns that cause this threat. Nothing else is causing the threat. It's the threat of that battleship blapping you. And if the battleship doesn't have blapping power, then the battleship just doesn't have power. Yeah, anyway, I was rambling. The pen of these French 380mm guns is okay, but the dispersion is poor. The gas can uses German battleship horizontal dispersion, which combined with the fact that these are actually really fast shells, 830, I think even the Germans themselves have like 820, and of course they got buffed dispersion quite recently. Yeah, it was 820. So it uses German battleship horizontal dispersion combined with this fast shell velocity means that the shells basically land all over the place. Combined with the fast shell velocity and the standard fuse means that even when you're hitting targets, you're probably going to be getting a lot of overpens. And one of the biggest issues is really that it's basically Richelieu, but instead of having both the turrets placed on the front, which is actually a pretty nice setup because it allows you some great angling, you have the turrets placed on the back, which means of course you have to give a lot more broadside. This thing has a 2-second faster reload than the Richelieu 28 versus 30 to make up for this supposed weakness, but it's not enough. It's not enough. In fact, the only ship that the gas can out DPMs is the Richelieu. Every other tier 8 battleship has better AP DPM. And of course they also have things like Overmatch. Oh yeah, and of course it's got standard French turrets, which means basically easily breakable, just like Richelieu, Chambord, and so forth. So if you're having to go nose in and they break your one single turret, well, you're actually not doing anything. That's fun. So paying money for this thing when you can get so many other great ships, yeah, not recommended. Let's do one more tier 8. Let's do actually another battleship, Vanguard. This thing has multiple citadels. It has the same issue that gas can, which is 32mm plating, but it actually has some other significant issues, namely that the citadel is absolutely gigantic on this thing. The citadel sticks out significantly above the waterline. It is huge in size. And normally this could be something that could be played around. This is maybe something that could be avoided. But the problem is that the firing angles on these guns is actually complete trash. The firing angles on these guns is terrible. So if you actually want to use your back guns, you are forced to expose this huge citadel to use them. Now, okay, this would be okay, but the issue is once again guns. The guns are 381mm, meaning that once again you lack the ability to overmatch 27mm of plating. Not only this, but you also have some of the worst pen of all tier 8 battleships. In fact, the only battleship you're beating in penetration is the Monarch, and the Monarch just shoots HE most of the time. So beating him is, well, let's say it's not that big of an achievement. The thing has improved accuracy. I think it had 2.0 Sigma. Like that, it's pretty good accuracy on these guns, but this just messes with the whole purpose of the ship because because the AP pen is so weak, in order to truly like punish ships, especially other battleships, in order to have enough pen to actually consistently citadel them, you have to get close, and then because of firing angles, you have to give broadside. So the ship doesn't have a good conceal. I don't think it had any sort of improved healing party. Oh, it does have a 60-second cooldown on it. Oh yeah, and actually this healing party, now I remember, this did have improved healing capacity on it. But the damage con is normal. Ultimately, it's just a very frustrating ship to play. Now I say this, I've done okay in this thing. I think okay, let's see. Yes, I've done okay in this thing. 74% win rate, not that many games, but like I've been able to do okay in this thing, but I haven't particularly been enjoying it, because if you guys have ever played battleships with poor turret firing angles, it's not fun, because just to use your guns, you're forced to expose full broadside all the time, and on a ship like this, if someone is paying attention, especially now with these new Soviet battleships that basically turn turrets in 30 seconds and can just go bzzzt and delete you, it's a really frustrating experience. The 32mm plating also means it's a frustrating experience to be HE spammed. There's not a whole lot of reason to get this. There really isn't. That's enough tier 8. Let's do a tier 9 as well. What do we have tier 9? Neustra Shimi. I actually don't have it here. I have it on the press account, but I wouldn't use steel to get it here. Do we have it in the armor? Let's see, Neustra Shimi. And the biggest issue with the Neustra Shimi is the fact that where do we have Neustra Shimi here? The biggest issue with the Neustra Shimi is it's a DD that's really good at surviving. It's got improved heal. It's really good at staying alive. That's its one strength. Now, normally that would be great, but it doesn't kill things. The guns are poor. A really poor DPM, poor dispersion on guns. The torpedoes are okayish, but the reload is very long, 125 seconds. So you're not really doing any DPM. In fact, the only thing you're really doing in the DD is surviving. That's not really enough to be a carry. Now, if this ship was a free XP ship, I probably wouldn't be quite as negative towards or advising against this thing, but considering this ship is for steel, you have to pay 20.5k steel to get this thing, and you could instead be getting things like Borgogne, Stalingrad, Summers, Black. These are ships that could make my top, like these made my top 10. Black was like high contestant to be able to make it into that list. When you can get these ships, there's just no reason to get the Neustra Shimi. And that right there is probably the same reason why I'm advising against the Azuma. The Azuma isn't that bad of a ship, but it's basically an oversized Ibuki. It's got 25mm plating all over the place. 25 all over the place, meaning every single battleship out there pretty much overmatches you. I think every single. There's like maybe the Scharnhorst you can bounce. And I think King George. Like basically ships that have less than 380. Everyone or just potato guns, that's what you can bounce in this thing. Everything else overmatches you. And then it has some of the worst shape ever on the Citadel, which basically means that you can eat Citadels from every single magical angle possible. In fact, sometimes I like to joke that this Citadel looks like a coffin. If you look at it from above, you see that it looks like a coffin. Because, well, it's very, very accurate to how playing the Azuma can be. The HEDPM isn't really that special, the AP isn't really that special. The only thing this ship really has going for it is the large health pool. And when you can instead get things like, let's say, Alaska, which is a monster of a cruiser, or you can just save it, you can get a Friesland or other things for free XP, I don't see a whole lot of point of getting this. In fact, Yoshino has 30mm plating and torpedoes, which makes it so much more useful. Azuma is... we hoped the Azuma would be good, but it just didn't end up being one. So this is another ship that is... you can have okay games in it, but as a gaming experience, it's not very enjoyable. 920-meter turning circle on a ship with this Citadel size is painful to say the least. Anyways, there's a couple of, I don't know how many that ended up being, but there's a handful of premiums at every single tier that you should probably avoid getting, and if you already bought them and you think they're amazing, that's great for you, but we're gonna have to agree to disagree. Once again, if you can be asked giving me a follow on Twitch, I will thank you by giving you tons and tons and tons and tons of giveaways. Anyways, I'll talk to you guys later. I hope you enjoyed this short vid.